but I want to start with player safety. We're barely a year past Adam Johnson's tragic on-ice death with the Nottingham Panthers in Britain. That happened last October, and we saw some swift action. You had the junior leagues all make neck guards mandatory. You had a handful of players in the NHL decide to put one on as well. I saw in the piece you wrote at dailyfaceoff.com, which we'll link in the description and the chat today, the comparison was to, helmets and then eventually now visors. Does it feel like a matter of time before the NHL starts putting in some harder rules with this?
I think if they had the choice today, they'd make neck guards mandatory. But this is a collectively bargained issue. The NHL can't unilaterally make equipment changes. And players have been very vocal about their want for choice and comfort. And I appreciate that. But even last night was a great example again of just the close calls that we've seen that just absolutely leave your heart, for lack of a better place, in your throat. I mean, look at the Pontus Holmberg narrowly misses a skate. It's tough to watch. And the NHL's hockey operations department has been clipping all season long all of the near narrow misses that we're talking about, inches away from devastating skate cut injuries. So the data is, despite all of that, the close calls that we see repeatedly on a night-to-night basis, and the unimaginable tragedy of Adam Johnson, a year later, 93% of NHL players, almost 92% of NHL players do not wear a neck guard. That's a surprising number. That's what was relayed to the GMs at their meeting on Tuesday. Was 55 of the 708 skaters in the NHL this season are not wearing a neck guard. They want the conversation to continue. They've provided these players with tons of education, samples, testing on the equipment, all the data points you could want. And there's like quite literally informational flyers available in their dressing room to find out more about it. I get that NHL players and hockey players in general are so stuck to their routines, but I can't imagine watching what we watched last year and then seeing some other anecdotal stuff and think, hey, this, I might be a little bit warmer, or my neck might just not be as comfortable. Like, to choose comfort over safety, the NHL, I know at this point, they're struggling with the issue and they want to keep that conversation going.
Yeah, I mean, we saw 12 years ago when they decided to grandfather in the visor rule. And now we're at the point where, I mean, there are a ton of guys who were in the league not wearing visors then, who eventually just made the change and put one on. And there's only 4 left now who are still wearing or still without a visor, which is also one of my favorite bar trivia questions.
I was going to say, can you name the 4?
Yes, because I copy and pasted them from your article.
Oh, okay. Ryan Reeves. I'm doing it off the top of my head. Ryan Reeves, Ryan O'Reilly, Zach Bogosian, and
Jamie Benn.
Jamie Benn.
We were doing this at Nation HQ the other day, or like a week ago, and he was the one I forgot as well. But yeah, there's not a lot around without visors. Frank, I shudder saying these next 3 words. The next CBA. Ooh, it makes me feel gross that we're heading towards that point again. But as we slowly creep up to negotiations between the two sides, which I know is down the road a little bit,
Not really.
What's on the early wish list for either side to make it a blanket question?
Well, let me see if I can provide a little bit of hope for you. For one, the two sides are expected to begin talking in early 2025. So we're potentially only like 6 weeks, 8 weeks away from substantive discussions beginning. The NHLPA is still canvassing their players. Their Marty Walsh, I saw him at the Hall of Fame, and he said that they have 14 out of 32 teams done on their fall tour. They were going to Salt Lake City today and meeting with a couple teams there, and then going to Dallas. So they're trying to find out from players what's on your wish list. And that's what was interesting about the GM meeting on Tuesday, because the NHL put it to the GM saying, okay, come up with your list, preferably in order of priority, for changes that you'd like to see made to the game. So what are we talking about there? We're talking about the potential of, hey, could we explore contract term limits instead of 8 years for UFAs and 7 years for 7 years for UFAs and 8 years for players that you're re-signing? Could we be talking about a term limit of 4 or 5 years? I can tell you that the support for that is not universal. Some teams, just like anyone doing their own finances at home or getting a car loan or a mortgage, sometimes you like the longer term that you can lessen the payment and spread things out a bit. So not universal, but what are some of the other things? How about the NHL schedule? We kind of all universally believe that the league will go to an 84-game regular season, which they had previously. But with that, what will this preseason look like? What about LTIR? Should we reimagine that? Will there be a playoff salary cap that you'd have to adhere to? There's a ton of things on the list. The arbitration process. Let me see, just make sure I'm not missing anything. The post-trade deadline recall rule. They're all things that they're starting to kick around and talk about that they're going to gather from the GMs. And as great as it was that the NHL took their temperature on Tuesday, I had a couple of managers laugh to me after and say, like, that's awesome. But at the end of the day, Gary Bettman and Bill Daly are going to determine what exactly is worth fighting for and not with the PA.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.